An apple a day keeps the silicon in fragments.
All right. Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon, the Daylight Interviews. Joining us this week is Josh of Stuffed Wombat Games.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Not a problem. How are you doing?
I'm coming down from an intensive work day. It's like late afternoon here in Europe.
Right.
I'm happy to close the laptop after this.
Indeed. Well, it is nearing lunchtime where we are. But putting that aside, right. So how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all that business. And we do that by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Oof. I mean, I was interested since I knew they existed, I guess. The actual and then I tried some free softwares as a kid and teenager, but never really got past the tutorials, kind of. But then I really started to make games after I was caught skipping school. Like a teacher caught me while I was trying to just get out of school, and they forced me to attend their class instead of the history class I was skipping, so it wouldn't be unattended. And so in that computer class, they learned Scratch, and that's when it clicked for me at that point, and I've been making video games ever since, kind of.
Like,
And then, I think 3 years ago, I mean, I've been trying to make money with I don't know, it's hard to say. I've been making it like really intensely for 7 years or something, and since 3 years, I pay rent with it. Just started selling shit and got lucky, I guess.
like
There's also not a company, just a single guy in a bedroom.
like not an unfamiliar position for our broadcast. We have many a solo dev, as they're called, to come to our shores in various capacities. I mean, some they're part time. They have to hold down a day job of some kind in order to actually pay the bills. So
for sure. That's I did that for a couple of years. It's hard, but I worked in a hostel, like in the shittiest hostel of Vienna, and it wasn't really mentally demanding work, so it was pretty perfect.
I'm not exactly sure what to say to that. But I mean, I suppose it was good in the sense that it allowed you to create some games.
It gave me a lot of time to think and to read and to store up energy.
But I suppose the question that beckons here is, at what point were you able to make this an actual career? Was it a particular release? Was it, did you just have enough games out there to make an income?
The pandemic hit essentially, and it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. I made and released a game, and that made a bunch of money. And I was like, "Oh shit, I can make money if I put stuff on Steam." And then I got an investment. It's like a private investment. There's some legal term for it in Austria. But essentially, someone just gives you money with like very few strings attached, and it was like, for video game terms, it's like a tiny, tiny amount of money, but it was enough to sustain me to make Quomp, which then sold pretty well. Which, yeah, that's how it went. It was like an angel investor kind of, who was just very, very offhand. Like the contract was very like basic, and everything was super low level. So I could do it. So that's how it happened.
Well, I mean, that is certainly fortuitous.
That means lucky. For
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Fortunate, if you will.
Yes.
So, anyway, like I said, from what I've been able to glean on your website, you have released quite a few games. Including a couple that have we've come across in various capacities, like Gut Whale and Ord.
Yes.
I recall we covered those when they were ported to console by Radalikia.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I made a whole bunch of games. Like Gut Whale is the game I made when the pandemic hit, when the first wave of the pandemic hit Austria. I was like, oh shit, that's like the commercial game I talked about before that made a bunch of money.
Right.
Yeah. It's surprising. It's really surprising to me, like how comparatively well remembered that game is. Like I often meet people who played it, and I spent like a month, like a very intense month, but still just a month working on that. And then there's other stuff that I've worked on for like a year, like a fraction of the people know. It's kind of funny.
Life is strange sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, and but I suppose we should circle back to is it Quomp? Is it pronounced?
Yeah, Quomp.
Okay. Yeah. Which, if I recall correctly, was published by Atari.
No, not really. This is a thing that happened roughly a year after the game released. Is we published it independently, without any involvement, and then we got contacted by Atari, and we were able to hand them the game, to like hand over the IP to them, and they've been carrying it forward. So they have, so the publishing page is because they bought it.
That would make sense, because I know they recently announced Quomp 2, and I know you have no attachment to that particular product. It's only because like we happen to know the people who are doing Quomp 2. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Connections are interesting sometimes.
It's quite surreal. Yeah. I also, one of the people who makes the music or sound effects for Quomp 2, like the company, I worked with them, I think 5 years ago on a Minute fan game, like Minute from JW and friends. I made like a fan game for that where you die every second. And the people who working on Quomp 2 audio did the music and sound effects for that game ages ago. So it's even more connected. It's like it's a whole web of connections. It's pretty crazy.
Indeed. Anyway, as we could certainly delve into a lot of these games. I do feel that we should move to more or less the main event. That is Mosalisa.
Mosalina, yeah.
Mosalina, there we go. Sorry. It's a bit of a wordplay thing.
If I make a game with a name that makes sense and is easy to pronounce, something's wrong. Someone should come check on me. That's not me.
Cry for help.
fair enough.
God to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. A fair enough assessment. And so this is. I'm not exactly sure how to describe this. If only because the way you've put this on Steam is this game is a response to the current trend of immersive sim design, where though I gotta admit, this isn't exactly what I think of when I hear the words immersive sim.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's genuinely a response to the abstract design direction, completely removed from how you interface with that design. Like if you abstract any game down enough, you arrive at doors that you have to open and keys that you use to open doors. You can. Perhaps I've gone too far into this theory land where everything is just doors and keys, right? But you can imagine everything in this very, very abstract way where like, oh, the shotgun you find shoots 500 keys at the door, and once the door has been hit with 700 keys, it opens, and that's how just damage works. So there's a lot of abstraction going on, or there was a lot of abstraction going on when I was thinking about this stuff, I think 1 or 2 years ago. So it's a response to the design, not necessarily how an immersive sim is presented. But I called it that for marketing reasons, essentially. I mean, it's true, right? It is, in my head, it is a response to immersive sim design. But what this evokes in the potential consumer is, the feeling of, oh, this is not really accurate is going to happen a lot. But that's okay because this is marketing, baby, and I just have to sell units. And immersive sim is a hot word, so that's how it goes.
Is it? Like, I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
Once again, when I think of immersive sims, I don't think sales blockbusters. I think of games that are critically acclaimed, but generally underperform in terms of sale.
It might be more in Europe than in the US with that, though, Adam.
Possibly, but how well did Dishonored do?
Extremely well.
Or Prey 2017.
Extremely unwell. Prey fucking flopped.
These are the kinds of games that gets invoked when people use the word immersive sims or imsims.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just operating at a completely different level of scale than any like generalized game industry stuff, right? Like if I get 1% of the sales that Dishonored 1 did, I can live for like 5 years, like I'm operating at a completely different scale. It's like I'm making almost completely different things. So in the scene of people who are my target audience with every game I make, which is always the group of people who are open to weird shit that they haven't seen before, that is the group of people I have to reach. And within that subgroup, I should have been more specific in the beginning, yes. Within that subgroup, the immersive sim topic keeps coming up in the last year. Where you can see a kind of excitement from weird essayist people and game developers and the fragment of the market that I interact with and that I see for this immersive sim concept. So it's like, yeah, it makes total sense. It's like it's aimed at like a very, very small portion of the overall gaming market, like a subset of the people who really liked Prey, right? But that group is still so large that because I only have to pay like myself and collaborators, that's still worth it for me, I hope. But yeah, you're completely right. It's a strange thing. Call it like that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we kind of align in the sense that, if nothing else, we cover a lot of weird games.
Yes.
Like,
Perfect.
like we just covered a game that combines Pong, roguelikes, and 1990s desktop computers.
Oh.
Yeah.
What is that called? I have to look that up.
Long. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, we're no strangers to the odd and the strange. You know,
That's why I'm here, I guess.
Yeah. As counterintuitive as that sounds, like it's like it takes a lot to surprise us.
Mhm.
But it does happen on occasion. I won't lie. Like,
Mhm.
but anyway, now that we've gotten the premise kind of zeroed in, I'm wondering, like, how freeform is this? Given that's one of the underpinning tenets of ImSims. You know,
Mhm.
the freedom to tackle a obstacle the way you see fit within a certain set of parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's a hard question to answer because of the I mean, essentially, if again, if you abstract it, which I always do automatically, essentially you're just always doing the same thing. You're always just making a platform that you can jump off of. That is essentially what you're going to do. But sometimes it gets extremely wacky, and sometimes it's extremely hard to say. I would argue it is a physics sandbox puzzle platformer, essentially. So you can, if you want to, you can come up with extremely obscure solutions, but there is a generalized underpinning of best practices. But then there is also a scoring system that tries to that tries to discourage those best practices to add like additional challenge on top. And then everything is random, so you get completely different items every time you play. So a level might be trivial in one run and then almost impossible in the next run. And the free-forminess only really reveals itself over longer time. Like when you understand all possibilities of an item or discover them while solving a level. Those are for me like the moments where I feel like it comes the closest to the closest to the feeling of what I get when I first played like an immersive sim, where I was like, oh, I wonder if this would work, and then it really works out. Those moments exist. They are just presented completely differently, and they still happen for me. That is the strange thing. I think last week on like Thursday or something, I took two items that I had been using for months and I found a new way to use them together. And I was so fucking surprised. So even after like 5-6 months of playing, I still managed to surprise myself. I cannot confidently say that those surprises are going to be interesting to a majority of people. But I can say that I fucking love them.
Okay. And how are you handling the randomization of the items? Or like is it just the items that are random, or is like the levels as well?
So the levels are handmade. So when you get a level, it's always going to be the same level. There was a lot of experimentation with like, procedural generation or responsive changes to levels and all of that. All of that is out of the window. That's all too complicated. Each level is always the same, but there will be around 100 levels in the game. And when you play through it once, you only see 9 of those levels. So you only see like 10% of the levels on a single playthrough. And then currently there are like 20 items or 25 or something, and you only see 7 of those. So there's a large level randomness selection where we say, okay, we take 10% of the levels and we take like 30% of the items. But then every time you play a single level, you are going to get only 3 of the 7 items that you have selected, and you're going to get 1 random level from the 9 random levels that you got. And then when you either die or succeed, you get new items, or like you get like from the same smaller pool, you get the items and the levels again. So it's like a 2-step system of randomness, and it is complete random. It's true random. Like most video games, there's great articles about this. Most video games use fake randomness. Like I think in Diablo, when you like do damage, like if you hit 5 times an enemy, you will always do the exact same amount of damage after 5 hits. But like if you how do I say this? Like the video game pretends to roll a dice, but actually it is doing complicated math to make you think that it rolls the dice, while also making sure that the balance doesn't break. There's multiple ways to do this. And Mussolina has none of them. Mussolina is completely unhinged.
And how did you achieve this?
It's been a question of... I constantly during development felt the desire to make it less random. To be like, oh, but what if you get the same level 5 times in a row? That will feel horrible. Or what if you never get this item, Like it's technically possible that you play the game 10,000 times and you get only the same 7 items every time. So there's like, oh, but the people will miss so much. And there's like, the biggest challenge in that was to actually allow the game to be broken in very small edge cases. To allow some people to have a horrible time, so to be able to allow some people to have a great time as well, to kind of like just not touch it at all, the randomness. That was the hardest part, because all of game design is essentially teaching you to always fuck with the randomness, to always, always control it, always intentionalize it, always make sure that the people are not having a bad experience. Like, there's a lot of reactive difficulty stuff. There's a lot of systems that like try to make sure that, if you die many times, a hint will be displayed or something. The biggest challenge in Mussolina was to ignore all of that.
Like, well, I'm trying to. I'm hoping that works out. Given
it does, yes. The playtesting is extremely positive.
okay.
It is also fundamentally different. I believe there to always be 2 paths to like, being accepted by a large group of people. And I got this from a manga I read at a friend's house, where there's like 2 ways to become like a professional manga artist. It's like either you make like a Naruto, you make like something that is very well established and you follow you make what is popular, you make what makes sense in the market right now, or you make the complete opposite and you make something that does not exist at all, that is actively like rejecting all of the rules that people have built up, because probably, and this is the gamble I'm doing with this game, there is going to be a group of people who are bored by being, controlled, and by being like directed, and by being made sure that there's never a horrible edge case or something. There's people who are bored of that. Like, this is a puzzle platformer, but I have not designed a single solution. I haven't designed a single puzzle, right? So I really like puzzle platformers, but I've played so many of them. I can read them, It's like the 700th time that I'm watching Star Wars. So if I get something that is actively rejecting all of that, I get excited by it. And it is working out with the people I've been testing with. what I'm actually trying to do is to be so specific, to be such a specific, unique experience that a certain percentage of people will just hate it. Like there's a pattern I recognize in game releases from peers or from smaller independent developers where they get 200, 300 reviews on Steam, and they're all super positive. Because everyone who played the game wants to support the developer and wants to, help and wants to do a positive review. And so you kind of get this sterileness, and it kind of feels like this game never really branched out and touched any new people. Like, if I see a game with 99% positive reviews, I'm not thinking, oh wow, this game is really great. I'm thinking, this game is only bought by people who know that they will love it. If I see a game that's like 70% positive, I'm looking at the negative reviews and I'm like, oh, what is going on here? There's something interesting could happen here. And I hope for that. So if it's not working out for 20% of the people, that's perfect.
That's certainly an interesting philosophy. If nothing else, I gotta admit, it's rare to have someone say that they would rather have 20% of the audience be dissatisfied with their product rather than 95% positive experience.
I've released like 4 or 5 games on Steam, and they're all in the 90% positive review scores, right? Like it's very rare that I have a negative review, because I'm making stuff that is, or like I used to make stuff that is very rejective of people. Like if you look at Producer, like a visual novel I did, if you look at that and you're like, fuck that, you will not buy it and you will not review it negatively. So all the reviews for it are super nice. But what this tells me is that there is at some point I failed. I didn't pull in new people. I didn't make someone want to try something new, I pandered to an audience. The audience is fucking weirdos, but I pandered to them, and I feel like there needs to be. Yeah, I just made like 4 games or something that have been like that, which is great. I'm very, very thankful that the people bought it, and that they reviewed it positively, which helps the Steam algorithm. With this one, I'm just hoping to change it up, how it works and what I want to achieve. And I'm pretty confident that the randomness is going to generate a horrible experience for a few people. But I also think that not all of the people who get the horrible randomness, like if someone plays it and they get super unlucky, I'm convinced that like half of those people will keep playing and discover that they were just unlucky, and that will make their experience with the game so much deeper, because they started from a position that was horrible, but then they kept going and understood it and became really good at it. And other people who get a really easy setup for their first run will be like, oh, this game is fucking easy, this is not interesting, and then in the next one something will change, but for everyone it's completely unique when the game hits them in the face, kind of, with some unlucky draws or some shitty sequences or whatever. And the understanding of that, the understanding that it's really completely, truly random, I believe, that is like the physical understanding of it is a powerful moment. And if 20% of people drop off before they get that moment, it is just a price that you have to pay in order to have the moment at all. Yeah. But it's hard. It's like I constantly, like when I get a shitty draw, when I get like items that don't work well together, or when I get levels that are impossible, which has been happening again in the playtesting recently, where it's like, oh, I added like a lot of new items today, and it's like, oh, with those new items, some of the levels are just completely impossible. Like I start the level and I know I cannot beat this, and it feels pretty shit. But this makes me excited as well. Yeah. It's definitely strange, but I'm coming out of a very peculiar situation where I'm kind of bored with making stuff that is exactly what it advertises itself to be, in a weird sense.
Hmm. And what sort of scope are you aiming for here? Like, how many levels and items are you planning? Because this is definitely the kind of thing that could build and build and build and never see release if unrestrained.
Yes, 100%. A friend saved my butt in that regard because she told me that I would have to do the Steam Next Fest. So I'm doing the Steam Next Fest, and for the Steam Next Fest, I need a demo, and that is like next week. So there has been a concrete like time that I've been working towards, where it's like things need to be ready, and they need to not just hint at the finished product; they need to be the finished product. The cool thing about this game, like you say, you could add to it forever, right? But every element I add is just another thing that could be randomly drawn from a bag. So what I have right now, I could confidently release on Steam as a full version. There's like enough stuff in there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to refine it. I'm going to make sure that it meets whatever strange quality standards I have for myself. But after that, if the game doesn't flop completely, I can just make an update that adds one new item to the random draw. So I have a bunch of ideas that I want to do that are very complicated to code. So I'll just look into that later, and then I just update the game, and suddenly the game, like with one item, all of the 100 levels can suddenly be played in one new way. So right now I have 20 levels and 100 items. So there's like, what, 20 times 100? There's like 2,000 solutions, kind of. But if I add another item, I get 2,100 solutions, right? And every item compounds. And then if I add another 50 levels, it compounds again and it compounds again. It's just this kind of like multiplication game where it's very, very easy to add new content because the content selection system is completely flat and static and never changes. Like, I don't need to consider the late game balance, like someone who would be doing a live service game or something. I don't need to consider changing the early game balance or something because there is no late or early game. Everything is always exactly the same amount of random. So updating the game and adding stuff to it, which I've never done with a game really before, like doing like continuous updates or like putting stuff out on a regular basis, is going to be ridiculously easy. Compared to any other type of game. So I have a bunch of shit that I wanted to do that has been cut for scope, to answer your question. And I know that I can just do it later.
Well, I mean, that is handy. If
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah.
And I suppose you got to ask this because recent events facilitated, but what are you using to build this game?
I'm lucky enough to always have been sitting on the outsides of the game industry in terms of tools. I'm using an engine called Construct 3, which is like one of the things that emerged out of ClickTeam Fusion, which is an ancient engine that Baba Is You was made inside of.
Yeah.
It's Construct 3 is sadly it's a pay thing. Like I have to pay them every year to keep using it, so it's proprietary. Other than that, it is. If it wasn't like that, if the engine would allow me to just buy a single unit of the engine and keep it forever, I would recommend this to everyone on the fucking planet because it's ridiculously lightweight and fast, and it's such a nice little tool. Visual scripting support is great. You can write like in JavaScript or something, but it's just it has everything is perfect except that I have to like pay it every year, which is fine. I'm happy to do that. The product is great for that. But I can't recommend anyone to like try it out if they are just like if they're making 2D games and they're like fuck Unity. I can't recommend it because of that, because it's just a walled garden. But I've been working with other teams on other projects, like Ord, for example, is made with Unity.
Right.
And the best way to facilitate that with like more complex engines to work for me is like either I touch all the code, like because the way I write code is very strange because I taught it to myself. So either it's like I have complete control over the code base, or everything is running from a spreadsheet. Those are the two type of games I've worked on, where it's like Ord exists, like the executive file of Ord is just interpreting a JSON that we export from a Google Sheet. So it's very cheap to make changes to the game and to write content for it. And in that sense, my experience with Unity has been great, but only because I never had to touch it.
Duly noted. Like, but yeah, it's
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, I mean, it's a frustrating time. Nothing else.
I mean, it seems to mark the shift towards Godot, at least in the space where we were operating.
It's possible. I mean, I've certainly heard Godot talked up more now that Unity has shit the bed.
Exactly, that's what I want. Yeah, yeah, they shit the bed.
Yeah, it's like, and of course, there are some who are touting Unreal, but an Unreal Engine certainly has its advantages, but
based
it
on
has
the
its
news from yesterday, they're going through some issues.
Well, that's the larger Epic Games company that's going through issues. That's not necessarily Unreal Engine.
I guess valid.
It's like, in fact, I'm not sure if anyone from the Unreal Engine side of things got axed.
No,
it's possible.
It was only developers from a single specific studio that was basically completely disassembled.
No, that's not what I heard. I definitely heard that it was company wide. I mean, it's like I heard Mediatronic was hit the hardest, specifically the Fall Guys.
Yeah,
Fall Guys, not completely disassembled, but deep cuts there. Yeah,
I got that wrong. Yeah,
it's like there were a lot of scattered news reports. So it's not, but my point is, Unreal Engine, it's not a good fit for 2D projects because I don't know anyone, and we haven't spoken to anyone who would use Unreal Engine in that capacity. And I know Epic doesn't frame it as any sort of 2D powerhouse, or if it even works for 2D. So
I think I've seen stuff where the gameplay is in 2D, but it's still full of 3D assets.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like that. But yet, I'm talking about a lot of stuff that's on the indie scene. Is pure 2D.
And anytime I've been to a game jam and people are starting to talk about Unreal, the project is always like gigantic. They take forever. It's a very slow engine for small teams. I've seen, I think, one team at a jam do something really cool with Unreal, but I've seen like everyone else. I've was kind of like got bogged down by the specifics of the framework. I'm assuming it's like it's like a big machine or a big car or something. Like it only pays off if you have to carry like 20 people. Otherwise, it's just
Well, yeah. Once again, it depends on what you're trying to do. But generally, Unreal is for not necessarily larger projects, but 3D projects.
Yeah. Yeah, which are always larger than 2D projects, like just in terms of like rendering and shit. Like, but yeah, no, I mean, Unreal is not a serious contender for a Unity replacement just because it doesn't run on like a low end computer. It's disqualified, right? Like all of the Russian hacker kiddies can't use it, so it's dead. Like it's like they're not gonna make like Slender Man in Unreal,
right? But yeah, I mean, for 2D stuff, Game Maker's there, and there's some lesser known engines that I can't remember the names of that I mentioned. I mean, the point is, Unity isn't irreplaceable. Like, but the fact of the matter is, Unity still is a widespread tool, and just given the murkiness and the ubiquity of the tool set, it's a topic of conversation that we bring up. I will note that we haven't run into anyone who's been working in Unity since that announcement, but I'm sure it'll happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is...
Yeah,
this
some people are too invested in it to get out, but everyone who can.
It's extremely institutionalized knowledge. Like if you've spent, like I've spent like 7-8 years learning construct free. Like I'm very reticent about leaving it just because I'm so fast. And Unity is banking on that, right? That like the people who've spent 10 years are not going to make the jump to a different engine.
I mean,
it's go ahead.
Yeah, from what I've been getting, they banked wrong because nobody's happy about this.
No.
And it seems like, like even if they're stuck using Unity right now, it's like when they're done, when their next project comes around, or if they are able to, they're ditching Unity.
Yeah.
Like
the crazy thing is that a lot of the studios, or like the size of people who have been using Unity for their commercial games, it's like less than 20 people. Like the smaller teams who make like who make just like a large chunk of the just like games that come out, like just the commercial games, like 100 to 300,000, like the low level indie stuff where there's just a lot of games coming out. It's almost impossible to get investment in that like size, right? Like the typical Unity game is getting assaulted from the Unity engine and the general funding opportunities. Like the people I know are all struggling like crazy because nobody is investing in those types of games. So I feel like it's going to just be a double blow, right? Like you said, the studios who are going to make their next game, I'm not sure how many studios are going to be able to make their next game at all, regardless of Unity. And then Unity is also coming on top of it. So it's going to be pretty crazy for the next few years, I think, in terms of studios shutting down and shit.
It's very possible. I mean, there are other problems going on. With the but that's unrelated. That's not really related to engine fuckery, and more related to, let's say, the economy. Because once again, it's been a tough year for tech and video games.
Yeah.
Like
it's the over-evaluation of the pandemic when everyone was dumping money into anything that ran on like silicone. They just threw money at it. And now all of those games are coming out. All of the overinvestment like period games are coming out, and everyone is realizing that this is not going to hold. So you got a lot of it's like it's going to be like an event. I think in 10 years, this is going to be like a period of history that will have a name or something, because it's just going to shatter so much shit. But
very possible, because like just yesterday, at time of broadcast / recording, we not only had Epic Games, but I think kind of buried news that Sega canceled a game called Hyenas, which had been in development for 6 years, was just about to be released. And they just tanked it, which is
Yeah.
very unusual at that scale. But
Yeah,
but
that's pretty
it's like
crazy.
I don't want to get too into the weeds with this stuff
Yeah.
because that gets away from what we're showcasing here.
Yeah.
And to bring it back around, what items will you be able to use to solve levels, to open doors?
Mm.
Like, what are your keys?
There's some basic properties that just happen in box 2D physics, which is just a box. You can just shoot a ball.
Mm-hmm. Hello?
That's not good. Is everybody here?
I'm back. Okay. Oof.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
still here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got dropped.
Technology.
My Wi-Fi had a hiccup. So you have a box, and you can stand on the box, and you can jump from the box, and you can push the box down a cliff to land on top of some other item. It gets really interesting when the items combine. When there's like ways to change properties of items. So everything you can throw can also get its gravity reversed. And then the gravity reversal gets cancelled out by a specific zone that makes movement of the main character and of everything that goes through it completely different. Like there's gravity removal zones, there's gravity reversal zones, there's items that attach to other items, there's items that attach to other items only in specific conditions, there's boxes you can teleport to after you've pressed the specific after you've used the specific item. There's a rocket that can turn around after it's been used, and then you can use it again to make it come back. But if you move it in a different way by throwing a box on it, suddenly it's in a completely different position. So it's a bunch of basic properties, right? It's like you can make a box, and the box can float upward or downward, or the box can always move to the left or to the right. And then there's different types of skins on that, and then there's different kinds of things that happen when two boxes collide. When two boxes collide, one of them can explode. The explosion will push everything away. The one thing that gets pushed away hits the floor, and because it's a mushroom and because it's upside down, it will bounce away, and then it bounces up and hits the coin, and the coin goes off screen, and everything that's off screen dies. And once all coins are off screen, the portal gets unlocked. So now you can go back. So it's like the basic item is a box, and then every physical property I can manipulate is going to be changed by different items in different ways. Like there's a zone you can spawn that makes everything stop moving. That's everything that's inside of the zone becomes a static object. So you can make a fish, and then you can throw the fish in a gap, and then you can put the zone on it, and suddenly the fish is a platform. And then you can put the frog, and the frog eats a specific item, but then when the frog has eaten the item, the frog becomes fat, so now the frog jumps lower, so now the frog can reach a cave that it couldn't before because it was jumping too high before. Like, it's really fucked up. There's a lot of shit. There's a lot of... Essentially, it always boils down to that you make a box that you stand on, so you can reach a place you couldn't. But...
Mm-hmm.
It's going crazy in how those boxes work. Today I made I call it bamboo, which is just a really long stick of boxes that are kind of like wobbly and that are like connected. I don't think it's in the footage yet. I think I made it after I recorded the footage. So this stick, depending on how long I want it to be, it can be like if it becomes really long, it will block you from accessing parts of the level. So every tool you have can also become a disadvantage if it's put in a place, or like if it randomly like moves, or if the chaos just pushes it somewhere where you don't want it to be. You can take a grenade and you can use it to jump really high, but then if the explosion also pushes one of your one of your objective points, it can push the objective point in a position where it's very hard to reach. So then suddenly, because you did something, you changed the level in a way that will probably never happen again while you play the game. when you've created this unique situation that now calls for a different utilization of your boxes than it was before. It's quite mind-boggling. And then when you play it a lot, like that's for me the problem kind of. I mean, I've been playing for like 6 months. I've been working on this game for 6 months. I've been playing all the time, and some solutions are just immediately obvious and extremely boring to me. But like I said before, if I just, like sometimes the items I have surprise me still, and sometimes if I add a new item, because you always get 3 items for one level, they combine into this completely unexpected clusterfuck. And so I really don't have a clue. Like I can say, oh, this is an item and this is what it does. This is a bomb and you throw it and then it explodes after 3 seconds. But I cannot tell how you're going to use it. Because, that's the point of the game that I haven't thought about. I mean, I think about how you're going to use it, but I'm not thinking about specific use cases. So I've often, during playtesting, I've watched people come up with solutions that I've never seen before, which is really satisfying. Yeah. What I'm currently considering, there's a interesting philosophical question that I have to answer very soon, where it's like, do I want items like you have selected an item and then you can shoot it, and then when you shoot it again, something different happens. Like, do I want that or not? Like, do I want there to be items that change? Like, when you have a box, the box item, you just shoot it and it's a box, and then you shoot again and it's a second box, But I could make it so that you shoot a box and then you press shooting again, but you don't shoot a box this time. Instead, the other box starts to float, or something like that. And I'm not sure if I want that or not. If I add that, I can make really, really complicated, strange, crazy items. But I'm not sure if I want that or not. Yeah. So yeah, there's a bunch of items.
Indeed. And is there any sort of narrative going on here? Or is it truly pure abstraction?
I was thinking a lot about a narrative. For a large part of development, we had a narrative implied. We had a journey. We had like little pictures of the astronaut guy like going between levels or like between zones, and I wanted to put lore in there. Like I wanted to write the item description for each tool. So when you have the tool, you can read the item description, like in Dark Souls. But all of that has proven to be work that there's a kind of like term that I use, like just from like it's like a designer jerk off, where it's like, oh, I'm designing something that's so cool and I'm writing all of this stuff and it's so cool, and then when you watch someone play, they don't care about any of that stuff at all because they're busy making the little boxes explode. So I had to make a demo for something. I don't even remember for what, but I had to make the game playable for some deadline or some it was a festival, I think. For some festival to submit the game, I had to make a playable build, and I just removed all of those story elements because I was like, I don't have time to make them finished. And then the game was just so much nicer. So there's a whole bunch of backstory I was thinking about, and there's a kind of like setting, there's a mood that we talked about with Silkersoft, who did the sound effects. There's like very, very specific directions for all of that stuff. But it's all been removed, and it was never really explicit anyway. No story.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that you're probably better for it, especially given that you are aiming for abstraction, and narrative is kind of counterintuitive to abstraction.
I'm not sure if I agree here. I think storytelling and narrative is abstraction, essentially. It is always, use words are abstractions, but this is extremely philosophical bullshit. The I think there is a version of the game that really benefits from a narrative, like that goes more down the immersive sim route, right? Where it's like, oh, if you beat a level in a specific way, or if you beat levels really quickly, NPCs are going to say different things to you. That I think could be really powerful. That you use the narrative, it tells a story, whatever, but the people who tell the story to you, or the content that tells the story to you, changes based on how you play. That was a large exploration where it was like to get closer to the immersive sim stuff, to be like, oh, the level changes based on your actions, like the world changes based on your actions. I think there's a really powerful version, but that, yeah, you're completely right. That would have blown the scope out of water, and it would be. I wouldn't be wrapping up the game right now. I would still be thinking about like, ooh, what is a cool name for a guy?
Right. And I suppose that does beg the question: how much more work is left on this particular product?
That's a very good question. I know that I know exactly how much time is left. I have to finish the demo. I have exactly 2 days of work left to finish the demo. Like 2 work days. Like I never work on the weekend, so Monday, Tuesday. Then the demo has to be done, and then there's very short time until the game has to be done. So I'm not really measuring the stuff I have to do in what has to. I mean, okay, no, this is wrong. But how much is there to do? It's mostly level design work. It's mostly going over the levels I have and adjusting them, because they, like, some of them are pretty old, so they were made without specific levels in consideration. So if you have this item, then the level just always, it's just obvious that the level is immediately solved by using exactly one item. And I don't want that. That is like the one thing that I will make. So I will have to go over all of the levels. I mean, the levels for the demo are done, or whatever. I'm just going through my to-do list. That's a very good question. I should think about that. But essentially, it's a bunch of level work. It's a little bit of visual polish, and then mainly marketing and community management. But it's all going to be over. Like in a month from now, it's going to be over. I'm going to announce the release date of the game pretty soon, but I'm not going to do it right now, because that's a whole marketing beat.
Yes. And have you worked out a price for the game yet?
Roughly, I'm very happy because Steam just allows you to change that. Like if you don't change the price too often in the backend, you can just change it like an hour before launch. It doesn't matter.
Much better than have to upload an entire new standard build or something.
Yeah, no, it's super. Like, as long as you don't switch it like every day, you can just, like, it's very easy to do adjustments. It's going to be between $6 and $10, in that range. I haven't thought about the price in a long time, but it's gonna be somewhere in there. Yeah.
And when does Steam Next Fest happen?
It happens on the 9th of October. But I recently heard from people I trust that what you're actually supposed to do is release the demo before Steam Next Fest starts, because it's a strange, like, all of Steam is an algorithmic game, so you want to always do what the algorithm rewards at any given time. And currently, what it rewards at the start of the Steam Next Fest is previous activity on your page. So if I get people to play the demo before Steam Next Fest starts, and then Steam Next Fest starts, it's going to multiply like the engagement I had in the last week. So I will release the demo earlier than that. It's strange. It's strange mathematics. Yeah.
No doubt.
Steam. It's from the 9th to the 16th of October, And this is probably like the most long-term planning I've ever made for a game release date and like a game's like launch, because Anke, my friend from Germany, told me I should do it. And now it's like, it was like pretty much exactly 6 months ago she told me like, hey, you have to do this, and now it's real. It's kind of strange. Yeah.
Indeed. And have you given any determinations on whether or not this game is feasible on consoles?
It is extremely feasible for consoles. Like everyone hates the keyboard controls. Everyone is only playing with controller anyway. So it's like a session of play is roughly, it's perhaps like as long as it takes to play like 2 rounds of Mario Kart or something like that. So it's perfect for Switch. But the console porting, like depending on the commercial success of the game, there's different options to pursue on how to get it to consoles. I'm pretty sure it's going to get onto consoles. In any case, it's just a question of how and when. But it has always like the play session length has always been made with a kind of pick up and play in mind. And there's also a game mode in there that is basically made for like couch play with like multiple people who play the game like one after the other. There's like it's a pretty strange system, but it's like I did some real life testing as well with some friends, and it's working way too well to not put it on consoles to facilitate this kind of like Mario Kart type situation. Yeah. It's pretty exciting. This is probably, out of all the games I've worked on, I have the highest commercial expectations of this one from all the ones I made. Like I'm expecting this to do better than any other game I did before.
And I suppose my final question at this stage is: have you given any thoughts towards your next project, given that this one is about to wrap up?
I have actually been working on the next project on the side. In summer, we did a whole boot camp for the next one. I have also, it's pretty crazy. I have funding for the next game, like another very small micro funding thing, which is very like offhands and just kind of like laissez-faire. So I know that there's a game that's going to like a game that I worked on is going to release in spring, and then there's a game that I worked on that's going to release in July, and then somewhere in between that I'm going to make another game because I got a cool offer. And all of these games I already know what they are, and I have prototypes and I have like previous work, and it's pretty much just jumping straight into production. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like for the next 9 months at least, I'm going to be kind of secure and just kind of like working, which has not been the case previously. I live very cheaply and shit, but it's never been this stable. Which also allows me to be like, whatever, I can afford to take the randomness risk with Mussolina. I can afford to make something that I believe is very special, but that goes against a lot of the game design wisdoms that get said, because it's like I didn't know this when I started the game, but now that I know that I have security for like the next few months or like the next year, essentially, I can really go all out. I can really just leave everything behind and just go completely crazy, which is pretty nice.
Yes.
Yeah. But the next game, the game that I'm going to release in July, I actively pitched a project that was comparatively brain dead. Like it's a sequel to a game I made before. It's complete. There's no unknowns in that project. It's just kind of like the most undemanding work I can think of in terms of game design for me, of coding as well. So it's really a really relaxed project because Mussolina has been pretty intense.
Hmm.
No, it's cool. It's cool shit. It's exciting.
Indeed. Right then. So I'll see if my colleagues here have anything further to ask.
I think I'm good.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I asked everything I had.
Very
Sweet.
good. All right then. So Josh, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today. It was a lovely conversation. Hopefully we can do it again. Probably sometime next year when those other projects are more ready to be talked about.
Yeah. Sounds good.
But until then, the game is Mosalina.
Yes.
It is currently up for wishlisting on Steam. And we'll be having a demo for the Steam Next Fest happening October 9th. So be sure to go and look at that and, the wish list and play the demo when it comes out today.
Yes. Yeah.
All right then.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Anyway, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments Silicon. As always, be sure to join us next time on the Sunday Reviews. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.
Hey.